Welcome to an overview of Mesopotamia. Now, ancient Mesopotamia was located between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. One group of people that migrated to Mesopotamia were the Sumerians around 4000 BC. Some of Mesopotamia's major cities include Sumer and Babylon. Due to a lack of natural barriers, this made Mesopotamia very vulnerable to attack by neighboring countries. Because of this lack of protection, the Sumerians eventually fell to the Akkadians, who themselves fell to the Babylonians, who also expanded the region once they took control. The Mesopotamians also thrived intellectually because they had a plethora of inventions that they made throughout the years. Probably one of the biggest inventions that came out of Mesopotamia was the wheel. The invention of the wheel really helped people get from place to place and increased the Mesopotamian transportation. The Mesopotamians also had a mathematical system. It was a system of numbers based on units of 10, 60, and 360 that we actually still use today to calculate circles and hours. The Mesopotamians also studied astronomy, which helped them develop their own calendar. During the period when the Babylonians were in control, they lived by Hammurabi's Code, which was a Babylonian king that introduced the code of laws which helped unify the empire. It established rules of procedure for courts of law and regulated property rights and the duties of family members, setting harsh punishment for crimes. In Mesopotamia, kings such as Hammurabi claimed divine authority, and the government also regulated religion. During times of war, kings also served as military leaders in Mesopotamia. Now, moving on to religion, Mesopotamians were pretty polytheistic, meaning that they saw a god such as this bull god within nature very frequently. The ideas that they had about God's creation of the earth and punishment of humans really influenced the writers of the Old Testament of the Bible. Priests conducted complex rituals within ziggurats. Ziggurats were massive towers or pyramids usually associated with temple complexes, and they were the first monumental architecture of the Mesopotamian culture. The Mesopotamians also believed in a very gloomy afterlife, or their version of hell was very bad. In Mesopotamia, the king, noble class, and priesthood all controlled the land. Slaves worked the land, and if they earned enough money, could even eventually buy their freedom. If people wanted to get somewhere or trade something by land, they would usually get to their places by foot, donkey, or cart. The cart was made possible by the wheel, which was invented there as previously mentioned. If they wanted to transport something by the sea, they would use a gulf boat, a raft, a coracle, or a river boat to get their items where they wanted them to go. A coracle was a raft made out of animal skins and was made watertight to transport goods upstream and downstream. They were paddled and floated with the current. They transported things such as fish, grains, and meat. Now we will move on to the military strength of Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia created a large standing army which they used to conquer many of the surrounding kingdoms in their area. One of the great strengths of the Mesopotamian armies was its chariots. A chariot is a wheeled vehicle pulled by 2 to 4 horses. Riders would stand in the chariot. Typically, there were 2 riders, a driver, and a soldier armed with a spear and a bow and arrow. Sometimes a third man was added to protect the rear. Chariots were used to smash into enemy lines to create a gap for the rest of the army. They were also used for leaders and generals who could move about the battlefield quickly, issuing orders. The Mesopotamians were also the first out of their enemies to start using iron instead of bronze for their weapons. This gave them a distinct advantage on the battlefield. For armor, the main armor used was a shield and helmet. Archers had a shield bearer who would cover them while they gave off shots as well. Full body armor was generally reserved for the officers and generals. The Mesopotamians also invented some of the first siege equipment used to defeat fortified cities. They used battering rams to break down gates and siege towers to go over walls. This was the very first time that such complicated siege equipment was ever used in battle. Well, that's all I have to say about the great region of ancient Mesopotamia. Now, here are my sources so I don't get accused of copyright or plagiarism. I hope you learned something from my presentation.